one-on-one, even if it is unscalable. So let me kind of sell you on this. So number one is that you will learn more from fewer high-value clients, all right? And if you're around those higher value clients, you will work with better people, and it will shift your belief set about who really is in the market, right? Like if you've ever struggled to sell a $50 membership, as someone who has, it's insane when all of a sudden someone's like, here's 15 grand. You're like, what just happened? 15 grand? That's $3,050 sales that I'd have to make in order to get 15 grand. That's how absurd that is. But when that happens again and again, it shifts how you see money and what services you think about creating. The next one that people get hung up on is like, well, I don't want to sell my time because selling your time is what poor people do. Let me learn you some stuff, all right? Which is every single person on planet Earth earns money per hour. They just don't necessarily denote it per hour. But all you have to do is take what you made last year, divide it by 2,000, and guess what? Voila, you have your hourly rate, which means you worked 40 hours a week, assuming you work 40. And so even if you work project-wise, you spent a certain amount of time on that project and you were remunerated, little fancy word. You got paid based on that work. And so even something like an investment where people are like, well, you know, investors don't trade their time for money. Of course they do, because you think, oh, Warren Buffett bought this company. He just wrote a check and then that was it. He was done. But what we're not taking into consideration is the amount of analysis that he does on macro markets, the amount of research that he's doing on a regular basis, the 1,000 other deals that he did all the due diligence on, then to say no, to only decide to do this one deal. So when you take all of that work in aggregate, for sure he's working. Now, after he makes the investment, assuming he has no effort inside of it, which isn't always true, but assuming he had none, then at that point, he would get increasingly larger returns, but still on a fixed amount of time that he put in. So the proof point is you live in time and you earn money in time, which means everyone has an hourly rate. And so the idea here is that as long as the thing that you sell your hourly rate for is more than you currently own, you will make more. Next point, when you are doing one-on-one, especially in the beginning, you have significantly more flexibility in delivery. That means because it's one-on-one, you can change things on the fly. And also when you have fewer clients, you can make these kind of quick iterations. So this kind of relates back to the first point of like, you learn a lot faster when you can just have these tiny little pivots. You don't have to change the systems. You don't have to retrain staff. You don't have to look, you don't have to recode. You don't have to have the scalable solution fixed perfectly. It's a great way to beta test ideas. The next one is that because you can still cap the time that you choose to spend with clients, you can still make sure that you're allocating as much time as you need to do everything else. And one of the big lessons that I've learned in terms of making more money is that when you have demand, cut supply. And so when you cut supply, what does that do? Why is the acquisition.com logo two concepts? Leverage, which is a fulcrum, and then a supply-demand curve. Because those are, in my opinion, the two most powerful concepts in business. And so when you have supply and demand at work, which we do, the reason one-on-one is so powerful is because the supply is so contracted, so fixed, it's so small. And so it forces, as long as you don't have limiting beliefs, which is why I'm trying to make this for you, it forces you to raise your price. And so the next one, and this is controversial, you make the money. Nobody else does. If you trade your time for the money, you have 100% margin. It's fantastic. Now, some people are like, well, hey, my hourly rate, it's not though. You're awake. Your hourly rate is the food that kept you alive. That is your hourly rate. Beyond that, the rest of it goes in your pocket. And so what people lack consideration of is like every business can have 5 one-on-one clients. Now, when you're like, how would I do this in a lawn care business? Well, it's just who's gonna be your account rep. You can say some people get your cell phone and some people get the account rep's phone. Who's gonna lead who's gonna actually design the whole garden? Is it just one of my guys or is it gonna be me? There's always an opportunity to make yourself the super premium version of whatever it is that you have. Now, here's a fun one. I wanna break this belief because I know the next one that comes up, which is, it's still just not worth my time. Bro, it is worth your time if I gave you $1 trillion. And so the idea here is not, is it worth my time? It's you have to fix the price so that it is worth your time. Not you would begrudgingly do it or think to yourself, well, no one would ever buy that or no one would ever spend that money or I think someone would be crazy. Fine, let them be crazy. Let people live a little bit. Let them be wild. Let them be a little spicy. If they want to pay you more money, you should give them the opportunity to do so. That's the point here. Now, what else happens when you have a super high ticket, unscalable, premium, one-on-one experience? You lift your entire brand. Because if you charge $10,000 an hour, something absurd, doesn't matter. And the thing that you have is $100, you can then have a very natural narrative of, listen, a lot of people can't afford to work with me one-on-one, and that's totally cool. I've taken the lessons I have here and I put them in a scalable format for everyone. It literally increases the perceived value, not just from the anchor effect, but from the narrative, the association, the branding that occurs as a result. Because even if you charge that and no one ever buys it, they still assume, because that is the narrative and that's what you put in front of them, that big price tag, the value associated with it, still gets transferred to a degree to the lesser thing that you have that might be scalable. Every business can do this. This is the action step before we get into tactics on how we can make something be perceived as more valuable. The action step is this: just have the price listed wherever you sell. And if you don't list it anywhere, say the price when you offer. And here's the thing that people mess up about this. You must confront the high price. You have to confront it. If you just say oh yeah, working one-on-one with me is $10,000. But anyway, what most people want to do is, no, in order for an anchor to work, you have to allow the prospect to make a full consideration of the decision, which means you have to say, hey, would you like to work with me one-on-one? Is 10 grand an hour, right? And that's, I think, the highest likelihood thing that I can do to help you to get to where you want to go. Now, the thing is at that point, what do? We shut up. We let them talk. Why? Because talking might result in them saying yes. And if they say yes, you get money, and that's amazing, right? And so we're at this point, right? Now, if they then balk, you say, don't worry,